Hey everyone, today's video we're going to take a look at this brand new Packard Shutter. I'm going to show you what comes in the kit that this comes with for mounting it to a lens board, explain what you get when you order one of these separately, and how to get all the parts you want. And then I'm going to show you how I'm mounting this to a lens board for my Intrepid 8x10. So here's the actual shutter. These work mounted vertically because they need gravity to close, but the way that this is a number 6, by the way, so this can work in both time, which is where it opens and then closes, or instant, whereas it'll open and close, and that's instant is one bulb press. You'll see that in a second, and it opens and closes. And the difference is whether or not there's a pin in here. I haven't gotten that far yet, but we will. So this is the actual shutter itself. This is the 1.75 inch diameter opening. This is the largest of these that will work in the Intrepid 8x10. Which is why I ordered this one. It comes with mounting screws. Let me get something to hold these. It comes with some mounting screws that will allow me to attach it to the lens board. If I can find them in here. There they are. 5 mounting screws. Yeah, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it looks like an extra one in case I strip it or break it or lose it. All of those are possible, if not probable. Comes with the number 6 pin and screws. Let's see what's in here. So here is the pin that goes into the camera to be used for instant exposures, and the way that it works is it just goes through this hole, and then actually when I mount this, it'll end up going through this way, but at any rate, and then what I'll do after it's mounted is cut this down to the right size because my lens is so wide that I'm honestly worried about this part of the shutter causing some mechanical vignetting. We'll find out. Anyway, this would definitely be in the frame if it was inside of the camera the whole way. But this is the pin that turns this into an instant exposure. There we go. It would help if I was strong enough to do this in one go. Let's try that again. Yeah, it definitely needs to be upright for that. Anyway, so the way that this works is the pin blocks a spring in here that, or a mechanism rather, that the mechanism locks it open. This pin prevents that mechanism from locking it open, and then a spring in here triggers the instant return. And then we have some screws in here as well, it feels like. So 3 smaller screws. And it looks like what that allows me to do is permanently mount this onto my lens board, because there's a couple of screw holes here, and then trim this to a length where pulling this out means that I will get a time exposure, and pushing it in means that I'll get an instant exposure without ever having to risk losing this pin, and that is awesome. The shutter also came with this piece of felt to help prevent light leaks, which is I'm actually not going to use it. I'll tell you what I'm going to use in a moment. And then it also came with the bulb blower. So there's a bulb here that connects to an air line, so that and this actually connects then to the shutter, and then the bulb is what allows me to take the photo. The Packard Ideal YouTube channel has a really good guide on how to use this, so I'm not going to go into detail on it here. And then so you can check them out. That's everything that comes in the kit for the Packard Shutter. If you want to actually mount this to a lens board, you also need a lens board pass-through, which is this guy right here. And the lens board pass-through is a little piece of brass that will connect to your tube. It goes through your lens board right here, and then you connect a little bit of the tube to this inside of your camera, and then the rest of the tube is outside so that you can trigger the shutter with the bulb. Okay, so what am I going to do with this? Oh, first, what am I going to do? Okay, so what am I going to do for the felt if I'm not going to use what came with it? I'm going to use this stuff. This is Dick Blick Stick It Black Felt, and I'm going to use it because it's adhesive backed. So, John, if you're watching, one of the things that would be awesome for this would be to just have the adhesive back felt straight out of the box, because this is really easy to adhere to the back of things like this shutter, and that would be great. So at any rate, that's what I'm going to use for my felt material, and what I'm going to mount it on is this little tiny Joseph Scheneider Dasykar 155F f12, f6, it's a 155 f12.5. Perhaps not the fastest lens ever made. So this is a wide angle lens on 8x10. 155 on 8x10 is about the same. It's got the equivalent focal length of 20 millimeters in full frame and 35 millimeter terms, but because of the different aspect ratio of 8x10 not being as wide as 35 millimeter in full frame, a 20 millimeter equivalent on 8x10 is way wider. It actually feels more like something in the 16 to 17 millimeter range. So this is a very wide lens. In fact, it is so wide that on my Intrepid, I have to use a drop bed technique on that in order to keep the front of the camera from being in the frame with this when it's focused at infinity. So what I'm going to do, and what I've started with, is this marking. I took the back off the Intrepid and I marked out the inside circle of the opening behind the front lens board, and then I indicated which screw hole this lens board's got to be, the standard has to be screwed into for me to get infinity focus with this lens. So Intrepid, if you're watching, one really nice thing to do would be, instead of having this circle, make it a square. Okay, that's just, or if not a square, at least notch out the corners a bit further, because this is the largest Packard shutter I can fit on this lens board and still get it inside of the Intrepid. It would be nice to have slightly larger corners here, so I could use 1 or 2 steps up on the Packard shutters, which would give me more options for using these with other barrel lenses. So anyway, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mount it onto the lens board like this. I'm going to screw it into the lens board with the screws, and then I'm going to put this fitting at the bottom of the lens board, run the tube to here, and then out the front. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I get no mechanical vignetting. So I'm going to go do that off camera and then show you what it looks like at the end. So the way that I'm going to do this to fix it to the lens board is I'm going to get this really nicely centered. I'm going to tape it up, by the way, with frog tape or masking tape, something I can easily remove from this. I'm going to fit it up in the Intrepid so that I know for a fact that I have it placed in the center, and that it's going to be able to fit and clear inside of the Intrepid with no issues. Then once I have that verified, while I still have the tape on, I'm just going to drill holes through each of these corners for the mounting screw, and then I'm going to drill a hole straight through here, and that will let me know where I need to screw the screws into. I'll screw them in from the front, all 4 of these, and also for the instant timing pin hole, I'll know where to put that as well. And then it'll simply be a matter of drilling a hole for the pass-through at the bottom of the lens board. So, through the magic of YouTube editing, we're done. That's better. Drilling the pinhole, you need to have it closed. If you I realized I hadn't verified that, but when you drill the pinhole, you need to have it closed so that the metal part isn't blocked here. If you drill into the metal part, I mean, it's going to drill your drill bit, but it could also affect shutter performance. So, corner holes, pinhole, okay? Now, as you can see, I'm starting to get the screws here fitted up. I've got the holes drilled. I already did the verification on the Intrepid just to make sure it would fit, taped up, and it did. So we're gonna get these guys going. Okay, so the way that I drilled these holes was I literally just took a 2mm drill bit, went through the back of each hole and through the lens board, and then untaped it. So I've got the screws set up so that they are just poking through a little bit. I'm going to do one last verification, make sure that I was correct, that this was on the top right, because what I want when I mount this lens on the board is I want the aperture indicator on the top, and it is. It's going to be very hard for you to see on this video, I know, but as we adjust, the aperture scale is up here, 12.5 wide open right there, and 50 is right there. So this lens is very interesting in that it uses an old aperture scale, 12.5. There we go. Focus 12, 5, 16, 25, 36, and 50. So, set that off to the side. With these holes poking through, I know that the one is the top right corner. This needs to be upright, so when it's mounted in the Intrepid, it's going to be mounted like this. Should just be fairly easy to get this guy. There we go, that feels really good. And let's see if this is lined up correctly. So, John, if you're watching, one thing I was thinking about while I was assembling this was, with the adhesive-backed felt, if you had like an inexpensive laser cutter, even like a little 45 water would work for this material, maybe even lighter duty than that. If this material came pre-cut, including the opening and the holes for the five holes here, then what people could do is, instead of affixing the felt to the shutter, I could just stick the adhesive part of the felt to my lens board, and then that felt would also become a template for where I needed to drill the holes for the shutter, so that I didn't have to like drill through these holes. And that, I think, would have made a few things a hair easier, but just an idea I had while I was doing this. Next, we're going to put in the hole here and put in the hole here for the pass-through, and then we'll get the whole thing fitted up. All right, so we made some progress here getting the fitting through, and I'm not going to show you the hole that I drilled there because my largest drill bit's a 6.5 millimeter, and that's a bigger hole than that, and the hole's very ugly. So we're just going to pretend the hole is beautiful and perfect, and that everything looks great underneath those washers. Okay, so first time I tried fitting up the hose to the back of this, I used this piece right here, which was too short, and it crimped, cutting off the airflow to the piston right here, and that meant that the response time for this was very slow, and there wasn't enough air reaching the piston for a time exposure. So the last thing we have to do is get the instant pin mounted. I've already gone ahead and drilled some holes for it. Okay, so the instant pin is mounted, but ooh, it does not like that one bit. These screws are too long. Okay, so what's happened is there are no screw holes right here, apparently. Or are there? And I just put this in incorrectly. Okay, looking into the shutter up here, there don't appear to be any screw holes in here for the screws for this pin, so I'm going to try shortening one of these screws, and let's see if I still have the same problem or if I have to do some more. Okay, so that's a bit stiff, but it's going to work. So now the question is, how do we size up the length of this pin? I suspect if I just nip it off here at the end, that's not enough to disable. And then I'm going to be taking this thing off again and resizing it. But we're going to start with just nipping it off right here at the end and seeing if that will be short enough. Right now, instant mode is working. So what I've got is just some paint, a little really long, narrow, single-use brush. I'm going to stick this pin right in here, pull it out. Now, as you can see, that pin is visible. Maybe you can see that pin is visible. I'm going to put some paint on the part of this pin that is outside of that is blocking my ability to do time exposures, and hope that pulling it out here doesn't remove that paint. Looks like I have just enough paint on here to trim it down to here. Everything is fitted up and working properly. Lens goes back on. There we go. And now I can finally use this lens. Very excited to use it. So that is how I mounted my Packard Ideal Shutter behind my Joseph Schneider Dasykar 155 Dasykar on a custom printed Intrepid 8x10 lens board. If you want to know more about these lens boards, Bit by Bit Photo on eBay, I bought this from him. I have bought all my lens boards for my Intrepid from him, and he custom printed this one for me with a specific hole size for this lens. Actually, he's done that for all of my lenses because none of my 8x10 lenses have standard shutters on them. So that is that. That's how I did it. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in whatever video comes next.